I'm going to start by inviting Anthea Coxon to come forward here. And just so you know, we've had some of our young adults have already finished, or they're not able to be here tonight, so they've asked if this could be put on, like recorded and like uploaded and stuff. We can listen to it in the future, so no pressure, but it could be on the interwebber thing for time immemorial. Well, I wanted to start, yeah.
I know you didn't tell me that before I agreed to this.
Not at all, not at all. Anthea invited me, and to be truthful, we've been talking about this topic already. I'd said I wanted to go kind of just cover a little bit of like sort of work through this, what does it mean to be human, but through the lens of saying God, sex. And those two things are deeply connected if God is our creator. And so the question, what does it mean to be human, is one of the most pressing issues of our day. And so we're going to do 4 weeks. The first one is called Beginning. That's this week. Then the next one we're doing is called Broken. We're looking at a story from 2 Samuel. Really interesting. You may or may not know the story, but it really looks at kind of the issue of lust, not just in terms of sexual lust or that kind of thing, but in all kinds of different ways, how lust actually fails to do what we ask it to do. It doesn't actually satisfy us in the way we hoped it would. So that's going to be kind of next week. And I think it's a really important look at, at just how we can try to be fulfilled in certain ways, and we find out that it just breaks in our hands when it comes to lust. And the next one is called Wise. We're going to be looking at some of the wisdom literature in the Bible, the Proverbs and Song of Songs a bit, and looking at how do we approach this with wisdom. And then the last one is called New. And this is really looking at the New Testament, and each week we're going to look at how Jesus kind of speaks to these issues. But in particular, we're going to zero in on the New Testament and what it says about how we're new in Christ, and what it means to live in the newness of life that He brings us. And so Anthea and I had been talking. I came into her classroom, actually, did a couple sessions with Anthea with a bunch of high school students, so we kind of got geared up. But there was something Anthea started with, and that's where I want us to start maybe today. Anthea, you had shared about, because I don't know if you know, but Anthea's getting married to Aaron Carl, who sometimes plays accordion. And if you can marry an accordion player, boy, you've landed yourself one.
Yeah, that's what sold me.
Captain half. The accordion, that's the girls just swooning all over the place. You break that bad boy out. Anyways, they're getting married in July, and I've been a part of their pastor, going to be doing the wedding, and Anthea, tell us a little bit about how some of the decisions that you've made around sort of boundaries and what it means to be an engaged couple but not a married couple, and how have you been kind of surprised by conversations you've had? Just tell us a little bit about some of that experience for you now.
All right, so I'm just going off the top of my head, so let's see how this goes. Prior to dating Carl, I was not in a lot of relationships, and those that I was in were very young, so this was never really an issue in my life. And I grew up in the church and, read all the books and heard, don't do it. And I was like, got it, no problem, sounds easy, don't do it, how hard can it be, kind of deal. And I have to admit, the teaching I received didn't go much beyond don't do it. And I have to say that after getting into a relationship and becoming engaged, the whole don't do it thing became a whole lot harder. I think I was fairly judgmental towards people who had made mistakes, if you want to, mistakes in the way I saw it in their relationships, because I had no context to put it in. And I have to say I have a lot more compassion towards people who struggle in this area, because now I actually know a bit of what you might have gone through. So if you've made some decisions that you're not necessarily proud of, I say no judgment. This is a hard area to grapple with. But just to come back to mine and Carl's relationship, thankfully we were very much so on the same page in terms of sex and boundaries, and that's not to say we've been perfect in that area. It's been an ongoing conversation from day one when we started dating, and is still an ongoing conversation as we're 2 months away from getting married here. I can't tell you how often it comes up in our conversations, but there is constant conversation about where's our boundary? Did we push that? Okay, we need to repent and step back here. Are the boundaries that we have working for us? No, they're not. How can we revisit this? Because we want to be wise and kind and loving to one another. And as opposed to the constant, how far is too far? Because there's a whole lot of range between kissing and sex, right? And that's been a struggle for us. And Carl will not mind me sharing that at all. That's been a struggle for us. So as we've kind of traveled through this journey of being engaged, I think just got even harder of like, well, now we're committed, there's like a ring, you know, I'm planning on marrying you. And I think it was probably about November. We got engaged last May, so it's been a bit of a longer engagement here. We got talking, and it was this question of, okay, we've got this don't do it thing, but why? Like, you know, why? Everyone else is. Like, you look around our culture, a lot of our friends are living together. One of Carl's brothers is living with his girlfriend. And it was like this, why are we making this decision? Because this is really hard. This is really hard to not sleep together. And we needed a bit more to go on of, we've got the don't do it, but why? Why don't do it? Why does this make sense in God's world? And so we spent a lot of time reading, praying. One book that was helpful, I just thought I'd bring it up, was Real Sex, The Naked Truth About Chastity. It is a really good book that kind of lays out a theological basis, but Dave's going to do a lot of that for us in the next while. So long story short, I'm going to speed this up. So Carl and I have kind of been working through this and thinking through this deeply and reading this book together and really trying to articulate why are we making the decisions we're making, and that's been helpful to us. Because whenever we are tempted to push things, we're like, no, we're doing this because there's a reason behind the decisions we're making. So, you know, we're kind of doing our thing and whatever. And what's really surprised me is just in the last couple weeks, months, we've had some really interesting conversations with some of our friends who are Christians. And just a couple weeks ago, Carl was having lunch with a friend of ours who we've known for a very long time. And he was like, oh, Carl, you're not sleeping with Anthea? Carl's like, no. No, that's a decision we've made. And he's like, why not? And this is a friend who we grew up with, attended church with. He attends church. He's not, you know, involved in a Bible study. He's like, if I was in your position, we'd be sleeping together. Why not? And to me, that was really shocking. It was like, oh my, like what on earth? Like and we were like, wow, this is interesting. So we're not the only ones struggling with having a foundation for this. And so thinking, talking, praying, and then I put the question to some of my students, and I teach at the Christian school and the high school. And I put the question to some of my students, guys, if you had a friend who was engaged to be married, and they wanted to move in with their significant other who can sleep with them, would you see a problem with that? And the response I got from the majority of my students at a Christian school was, maybe, not sure. Which was really alarming to me in that what was becoming clear was we hear the don't do it, but we don't necessarily have a basis for the why. And we need more in a sex-saturated culture where the decisions we're making as Christians are actually really contrary to what the world says. And so I'm going to stop there.
Great. That's great. Thank you so much, Anthea. Yeah, give her hands. She's brave. you know, one of the things I think is so valuable about just having someone like Anthea share is that sometimes in our world, young people think, well, it's not possible to be committed to somebody and to not be sexually active with them. And the truth is, it's not only possible, but it's good. And from a Christian view, singleness itself, and we'll look at this over the next weeks, is elevated as high as marriages, as a status. This is not only possible, but it's actually good to be celibate, and the Bible says so. It's good to be sexually active in the context of marriage, and it's good to not be sexually active at all. And both of those statuses of life, you might say, singleness and married life, are equally valued in the Bible. And so we are going to dive into, and I think Anthea really put her finger well on the question, is that you may have heard the message, and you're like, don't do it, but you maybe haven't heard the reasoning of, well, why not, as Anthea put it. And that's what this series is about. It's about kind of going underneath the question and wrestling through, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to belong, to be God's creatures, and to understand sex and sexuality within that framework. And so we're going to begin. I came across a book today, so obviously I haven't read it, but I read a great review on it. And the author, I did, yeah, this is it. The author's name is Dale Keene, and he's a professor, teaches sociology and ethics, and is at a Christian university in the States. And his book is called Sex and the I World, Rethinking Relationships Beyond the Age of Individualism. Now, because I only found it today, obviously I haven't read it, but I'm gonna pull out a few quotes from a guy named Preston Sprinkle who wrote this review, and I think this is going to give us a helpful starting place, thinking about the different ways that culture and cultures think about sex and sexuality. So Keene examines 3 different types of society, and he labels them the T world, meaning the traditional understanding, the I world, or the individuals at the center of it, and the R world, a relational understanding. He looks at how these 3 worlds understand sexuality, and he looks at it in relation to anthropology, identity, relationships, and morality as a whole. And so, in short, it goes like this. The T world views sexual morality in traditional terms. Its primary founders of this view would be Plato, Aristotle, and the early church fathers. And this view basically says sex belongs within the context of marriage between a man and a woman for the purpose of procreation and strengthening the marital bond between the 2 partners. Most relations in the T world are given, so not selected, and that still happens today. In many traditional societies, there's arranged marriages. So you're sort of given to another, and even at times, in some senses, you might be born into a relational kind of matrix of family and community. And even though marriage is a choice, it becomes a relational obligation once you commit to it. Here's a quote from Keene. Hence, in the T world, the key to relational fulfillment was not to find the people with whom we most wished to relate, but to love and engage with those to whom we've been given. And now, if this to you sounds a little bit like a Christian vision of marriage, well, you would be partly right. There is overlap, but it's not identical, and you'll see how in a minute. The next view he talks about is the I world, and this one's really important for us to understand. That's the world that we live in, especially in the Western world, meaning in Europe, North America, kind of. Friedrich Nietzsche was a philosopher. You might have heard of him sort of in the last century. And he had a huge influence on what's called the sexual revolution. And he would be one of the primary founders of this view. Here's what Keene writes. He says, the I world makes individual freedom its non-negotiable value. Freedom of individual choice is the highest ideal to the I world. The I world is predicated on the foundational belief that the expansion of individual rights will lead to increased happiness and fulfillment. And then Keene kind of notes that the only sort of taboos or the kind of guidelines within this view are these. One may not criticize someone else's life choices or behaviors. That's out. Two, one may not behave in a manner that coerces or causes harm to others. You kind of think, yeah, that sounds right. And three, one may not engage in sexual relationship with somebody without his or her consent. That sounds pretty reasonable too to us. And then the last view that he engages is this one. The our world, he says, is shaped by the Christian worldview and believes that intimacy and love are found in relationships. Both relationships of choice and in relationships of obligation, regardless of whether or not these relationships are sexual. The abundant life is the product of having an intimate love relationship with God and with others, and sex has very little to do with it. In the our world, the relational world, sex is a significant component of a marriage relationship, but a marriage relationship isn't essential for human flourishing. That's what I said off the top. Singleness is as valid an option within Christianity as married life. We'll talk about that more in the weeks to come. But deep, connected relationships filled with purpose and meaning do not have to have a sexual component. And the kingdom of God, we actually find out it spreads not by people having lots of babies and raising them to be Christians. That's not the primary way the kingdom of God is to advance. How is it to advance? By sharing the good news, by telling others about Jesus and what he's done. And so in this sense, celibacy and not having sex outside of marriage is a valued lifestyle within Christianity. The our world believes that the sexual revolution and the I world has become so focused on finding happiness in sexuality or sensual or sensory experience that it has missed the love and intimacy for which our soul craves. And then here's a quote from Keene. Unfettered sexual freedom can inhibit our ability to cultivate and enjoy love and intimacy. In the our world, life is not spent searching for people. This is the relational world, the Christian worldview shaped one. Life is not spent searching for people to make us happy, but is instead spent cultivating relationships that we already have. Then Keene makes clear that the T world is not the same as the R world. The traditional world is not the same as the Christian relational world, even though there's some overlap. The T world has many good things about it, but it also devalues women. It cultivates patriarchal marriages and fosters societal systems of inequality, he points out. He's right. While Keene is very critical of the I world, he does admit some progress it has brought to society, including equality among peoples and healthy tolerance for diverse cultures to exist together. So now as we begin today, you kind of have those sort of three quite distinct views about sexuality in mind as we kind of proceed through our series as well. And we're looking at the question really, how does God give us clear direction about sex and what it means to be human? We're getting underneath that kind of question of the how, like why, is it just an outright prohibition? Or what's going on here? And really we do have to look at the very beginning of the Bible, because it begins to kind of flesh out who we are as humans, and then what our sexuality will be and will be about as well. In Genesis 1, we read these words about God's creative work in humanity. God says, let us, interesting, plural. God, as we find out later in the story of the Bible, reveals that he is not simply a single entity. God is one, as Tertullian says, but God is not alone. That God is actually Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And we actually see in this text, God is speaking in relational language. Let us make humans in our own image, in our likeness, so that that's purpose statement. Why are humans made in the image of God? What does that mean? so that they may rule over the fish of the seas, the birds of the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So, God does it. He creates humanity in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Just a quick question to chuck out there, and I want your response. What does it take to image God? Based on that little verse. Yeah. A man and a woman together. It takes a community to image God. One person, one half of humanity apart from the other half of humanity, male without female, cannot image God. That's important. God blessed them and said to them, it's a blessing, not a command. Notice that too. That's important. I don't command you get married and have sex. That's not the command. It's a blessing. This is what you can do with who you are. God blessed them and said, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. A few comments to help clarify. What is this about? First, the commands subdue and rule over. These are not code for rape and pillage the land for your own profit and benefit. Look at Genesis 2:15. Here's what we read about the relationship between humanity and the earth God created. It says, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. That's our relationship with the earth that God made. To work it, that means to cultivate it, to bring about all the potential that is kind of laying latent in the land and produce structures, to take uncreation and make creation out of it. So we actually get to mirror the work of the Creator God in this. That we take the raw materials and we form them. We give form to what was formless. And we build cities. And we do art. And we cultivate. That's where the word culture comes from. Fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over it. These are not code words for just use it for your own benefit and don't care about it. No, it actually means caring for the earth. And that's important. A huge part, actually, of what it means to be human. When we look at the Bible, at the beginning, we see that there's a garden, Genesis chapter 2. What do you see at the very end of the Bible? Does anyone know? Is there a garden there? It's a city, yes. It's a city. So we have these bookends in the Bible. It talks about the tree of life in chapter 2. It also talks about the tree of life in Revelation chapter 22. The trees are on both ends of the Bible. And in one it's in a garden, and in the next one it's in a city. So God gets actually what God has always been after. A place bustling with human life. It is filled. And it is a place where people are bringing in all their ingenuity, all their creative work. The various languages are all present there in the city of God, the very end of the Bible. Cultivating God's good earth, bringing about its potential, being co-creators with God. In fact, Richard Middleton, a scholar, says that to bear the image of God is a task. It's a job. It's the task of creating culture. It's the task of bringing order out of non-order. In the ancient Near East, when a king would be ruling a land, what they would do is they would make a tzelem. It's a Hebrew word that means an image. It would be a statue, and they would put the statue in a distant corner of their land because they weren't personally present there, so they put a statue there. And that statue was to remind all the people who was Lord over this place. It's like a representative of the king himself. And in fact, they got a couple pictures of, this is in, not the ancient Near East, but the Near East today. It's a picture of the Saddam Hussein statue. This was essentially that same ancient practice. You'd set up a statue to kind of say who rules over the land here. And when Baghdad fell under his rule, the Allied forces toppled the statue. Why? Because that statue was a symbol of who was reigning there. And to pull it over and smash it was also a symbolic gesture to say, guess who's not reigning here anymore? In the same way that a statue or an image would be set in the distant corners of the empire, so God creates humans in his own tselem. We bear the image of God to represent him to the rest of the non-human creation. That's our job. That's what it means to be human, is to represent God on earth. You know, that's your job. That's it. It's to care for the things that God cares about. To be just in our dealings with others. To create structures that are good for human beings to thrive in, that are good for the non-human creatures as well. Bearing the image of God is a task. And the Genesis literature is picking up on that same idea, that God creates this world as his temple, actually. The place where he creates this space, and then he puts like an image of the God in the ancient world will be placed into the temple. So God finishes his creative work by putting humanity into his temple, the place where he dwells. And we reflect him. Our job is to reflect him back out to others. We represent God in his interests. But notice too, human beings are bearing God's image, and it's a shared task. This is what Nicole pointed out. It takes male and female working together. One does not image God without the other. And that doesn't mean, well, I'll get to this in a minute. Hit hold on that question. We image God in community. Just as God is a community of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, we are in community with others in order to bear that image out in the world. We're made for relationship. Male and female partners, counterparts in the task of culture care for the earth, cultural creation, care for the earth. These are also counterparts in procreation, as in having babies. So God blesses them, and they reproduce. That's one element of their partnership, but it's only one. See, in Genesis 2:18, we read these words. The Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper," and Ezer is the word that's used in Hebrew, and it's used elsewhere, just in case you think that's like, oh, that's like someone to help me out a little bit. This woman is this thing that's going to help me out. Is this kind of, that's nice to hear. No, Ezer is used of God himself in the Hebrew Bible. This is a very strong, this is strong language. This isn't a weaker partner. This is a very strong thing. The Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." And when God said it's not good for the man to be alone, it's a statement of non-functionality. The human isn't functioning. The man in the garden isn't functioning as he's meant to function without the other half of humanity being there, without the woman in the midst. So we see that God brings these animals before Adam, and Adam names them. That's basically the scientific job of taxonomy. He's giving kind of order. He's bringing order out of what's not ordered, and he's giving names, and that's a part of the human task as well, as to do science. Actually, there was a march on Capitol Hill. You guys hear about this? The March for Science? Yeah. There was one pastor holding up a sign, and it was a quote from John Calvin, and he says, "Do not neglect your science, lest God judge you for sloth." He's right. Don't neglect the scientific task. It's ours. It's been given to us by God. We see it right here in Genesis. We need to do our sciences and do them well. That's just an aside. Anyways, that's part of the task of being humans, doing our science, doing it well. Not being slothful or lazy in our study of the natural world. God gave us that task. But God brings these animals up before Adam. Adam names them. But it says that there's no suitable counterpart for the task at hand. And then next we see this imagery of Adam being put to some form of sleep. In other words, the Hebrew word is interesting here. It doesn't necessarily mean like he's knocked unconscious and he's out. It could be that he's having a vision. There's this kind of this picture that he's been given. So that's a question that Hebrew scholars kind of wrestle with. What does it quite mean? But we see is that there's the side of Adam. There's this picture of the side being taken out of him, almost like Adam's being cut in half. So It's like the other half of what it means to be human is being formed in this description. And the woman here is described by the man, once the woman is there, as bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. And here's what this means. This means this. And that means it probably doesn't mean a whole bunch of other things, but it does mean this. It means that the man and the woman are, here's a big word for you, ontologically the same stuff. They're both human. Okay? Just like Adam was seeing all these animals, are they of the same stuff? Are they ontologically human? No, they're not. And then the woman, in this story of the creation of woman, we have a shared ontology. Both of them are human beings, but notice they are still distinct in terms of their sex. They are gendered as male and female, but they're the same kind of thing. They're human. Bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. This is the one whom God has given me to partner with in the task of bearing his image, which we've just learned is what? A task. To reflect God's image to the rest of creation, to care about the things God cares about, to be about the work of preparing for the city of God one day that is coming. That's promised in the book of Revelation, right at the end of the Bible. They too are going to be partners in reproduction, but they're going to be much more than that. The woman here isn't assigned the role of, you will be the one who bears children, who's barefoot, pregnant in the kitchen, and that's it. No, actually, she's seen as a partner, as the counterpart of Adam in the task of being human, imaging God. Here's where it culminates. Look at Genesis 2:24 and 25. This is why, and this is referring to the fact that the woman and man are now co-partners. There was a suitable mate, a suitable helper, Ezer, for the man. This is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and the two become one flesh. Adam and his wife, they're both naked. And they felt no shame. What we have in this scene is God's intention for how a man and a woman experience life together. This is a picture of where human sexuality fits into God's design for us as humans and for sex too. Notice first, there's leaving and there's exclusivity. The two are no longer just the children under their parents' roof. They are forming a new family. Something new is happening here. For young married couples, there is always this wrestling through what it means to both be connected to and in healthy relationship with your family of origin, and to also have some separateness and leave them behind. There is a leaving that needs to happen as well. And that's a wrestling that young couples, all of us, had to wrestle through and to figure out. But second, that exclusivity entails only two people. It's one man and it's one woman. And they're engaged in sexual relations. Notice that the two become one flesh. This one fleshness is both metaphorical. It's speaking of how their lives are now bound up with each other in a way that's inseparable. Jesus even quotes this text when he talks about divorce and marriage and what those options are. And he says, you know what God has brought together, let no man separate. And then he quotes this text. So this text is at the center of how Jesus thinks about human sexuality and relationship. It's one man and one woman exclusively. No one else involved in that relationship. And that actually gives us some real groundwork as well for why wouldn't we sleep with people that aren't our spouse? And it's because when we join ourselves to someone sexually, it's as though we're entering into this one fleshness with them. And yet there's no commitment there. There's no whole life one fleshness. And so the book that Anthony has is called Real Sex. And the reason is, and I'll learn little sections of it, but the author argues when sex isn't doing what it's talked about in this passage and in the Bible, it's not really sex. Because sex is meant to be binding two people together for the whole of their life. It's meant to be exclusive. It's meant to be mutual. between these two and these two only. The fact is, the sexual union that we see here, it's not only metaphorical, it's quite literal too. That in the act of intercourse, two people are as close as two human beings could possibly be, without getting too detailed, of course. And that sexual union is actually a key element of the union of two people in marriage. And this text gives us that exclusivity in that setting for relationship. Now, with this in mind, let's go back to the world in which we live, the I world. Here's what Sprinkle, how he kind of summarizes some of this. As stated above, even though the ethics of the I world assumes that sex and sexual fulfillment is essential to human flourishing, Keene argues that this is simply untrue. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to flourish as a human being? Do you need to be having sex to be fulfilled as a human being? Good answer. The world in which we live might disagree with that, actually. Here's what he goes on to say. He says, we've been conditioned to think and feel this way, that if you're not having sex, something's wrong with you. The propaganda of our hyper-sexualized age is overwhelming. And it would be the pinnacle of ignorance to think that human desires are unaffected by our cultural narrative. Like a fish that doesn't know what wet feels like, we swim through a sea of sexual propaganda, unaware of how profoundly our cultural narrative shapes our desires. The I world is telling us that a person who's not having sex is not a fulfilled person. To quote Keene, as this reasoning goes, if sex is the essential aspect of human fulfillment, then if Christians or anyone else are missing out on sex, and if God wishes that we have the most fulfilling life possible, then that which stands in the way of this fulfillment, divorce, remarriage, or cohabitation, must not be wrong, after all. It's basically saying, you can't see the issue here. Too often, even Christian people have bought into the I world view of life. That what matters most in life, what is the highest good, is personal fulfillment. And our world kind of around us says, well, that means sexual fulfillment too, right? We kind of go, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that means sexual fulfillment. And God wants me to live a full life, right? Yeah, God does. So why would he keep me from being sexually fulfilled? I don't know, that doesn't make sense. If you start from the assumptions of the I world, where individual fulfillment is the highest good, not love for God, relationship with him, doing life as he intended it to be. And so if the idea of sex as it only belongs within marriage limits this, we think it can't be right. But here at the beginning of the Bible, we see a vision of what marriage and sex will entail. A couple, be a man and a woman, forming a new family, exclusive to all others, and committed for life. Now I realize that a talk on sex of any sort can sort of raise the level of shame, a feeling of, boy, I'm just not good enough. I've blown it. Whether it was because of experimentation in the past, or because you just didn't have the boundaries and so you just didn't have anything that you were filling or crossing anyways, because someone else did something to us. Maybe it was a form of sexual abuse, or one of these times where you just didn't have the courage to say no when things went farther than you know they should have. Here's what you need to know. The purpose of this series isn't to shame anyone. The purpose is to help us get a handle on what a Christian view of sexuality is and what it really means to be human. It's to be clear that this is not an anything goes view. It's not, to be sure. But what we've done, right or wrong, isn't the center of the Christian faith in the end. What is the center is what God has done to forgive us, to renew us, to give us a fresh start, and to help us, empower us to live in a new way. The heart of the Christian message is that God became a human being, took on flesh and blood himself, entered into our history, and gave up his life. Why? So we could be washed. So those ways that I have personally messed up, whether it was just in my mind or in my behavior when when it came to sexuality can actually be, my record can be wiped clean. Paul will say, but talks about the Corinthian churches and names a whole bunch of sexual sin that they've got into. Then he says this, but, most important word in the Bible, but that's not you anymore. It says, but you are washed. We are washed when we come to Christ. When we trust in him, when we say, God, I have messed up. I need your forgiveness. Guess what he does? He forgives us. And it doesn't mean, oh, we just keep on doing the same thing over and over again. Well, no. He forgives us. And then he says, you are mine. And I've called you to something higher and better and deeper than even you could dare to dream about. Walk with me. And it's that relationship, our world, with God at the center of it. That's what gives meaning to our human existence. So there is a very clear picture of what God intends for human sexuality, and all of us will at some point, I guarantee you, you have messed up sexually. You're thinking, no, I haven't. I haven't done anything wrong sexually. You know what? None of us aren't broken in some way in this area. That our hearts, our desires are bent toward, well, God, I want to do what I want to do. And sometimes it's just in our minds. It's just taking a second glance at the gal on the beach. It's, it's just things where I'm going, I'm using someone else to get something from me. I'm not seeing them as a human being, I'm seeing them as an object. It could be that. And that, as we'll see next week, is broken too. Here's what you need to know. You are loved. God cherishes you. You may desperately need his forgiveness, and guess what? We all do. And it's available right now. Let's pray. And then I've got a couple of guests that are going to share as well for a few minutes. And then we're going to maybe talk for a few minutes of discussion, and then we're going to, I don't know, hang out, go to Tim Hortons. What do you guys do? Doesn't matter. Let's pray. God, we thank you that you've actually got a vision for what human flourishing looks like. That we don't have to sort of flounder and wonder about who we really are. We know that we're your creatures. We're not the creator. You are. We know that we were created to image you for the task of representing you to the rest of humanity. We know that we're not to do that alone. That you've given us a community, and that community of humans is made up of two distinct groups, male and female. And we thank you that you enable male and female to make more people. And we thank you that you've given us a context in which that works. And we thank you as well for the reality that if we're not sexually active, that doesn't mean we can't be fulfilled as people. We thank you for that, Lord. And we just confess that, God, there's often ways that yes, in fact, we have been broken in this way. And we celebrate and rejoice in the reality that you have done everything necessary, Jesus, through the cross, by giving of your life so that you exchange our guilt for your righteousness, and that you were raised from the dead on the third day, that we know it's really true, and that we look forward to the new heavens and new earth, where we will be completely restored, where the disorder in our world will be completely turned into order, once and for all. And finally, we look forward to that. We rejoice in all you've done. And now, God, as my friends, new friends, come and speak as well, would you just empower them, give them your words too. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And so, Mark, Joe, you guys good to go? You can bail if you want. No, they're coming. This is good. Yes. Joe's like, no, I'm bailing. No, you can do this. Come on out. Come on out. I was just introduced to this lovely young couple yesterday. Yeah, you can bring some chairs. That's a good idea. You don't have to have this on here anymore, do we? No. You can each have a microphone here. Isn't that great? Oh, Joe's. It's going to be okay. I don't even know your last name. What's that? Safer that way. There you go. We're going to remain anonymous. This lovely young couple were here yesterday. They're visiting some family friends that were in the neighborhood, and this family friend came up to me and said, hey, I got these friends. One of them is an Olympic athlete, the other one's a doctor. I think, well, she was mistaken. Reasonably accurate, there you go. Do you think they should talk at Young Adults Forum? And I was like, I don't know, maybe. We're talking about sex. Do they want to talk about that? So we had this really awkward conversation. Joe was like, no, we don't. Mark's like, yeah, this will be great. This will be great. And they kind of gave me a hard time because I was beating around the bush being like, I don't know how to ask this couple if they're gonna, like, what did they even think about God and sexuality and all that kind of stuff? So I'm gonna start with some simple questions and then we'll kind of get into some other stuff as well. Does that work? Good, okay, so just take a moment to introduce yourselves and let us know, what do you guys do with your time and energy? For fun and for work, maybe. And why are so many of us wondering if you're Australian, or we're not quite sure?
So, my name is Mark, son of Mandel. We're originally from South Africa. We immigrated on the 27th of December, and we moved to the metropolis of Stettler in eastern Alberta, where my wife was doing an assessment as a family physician, and then we finished that up in late or early April, moved across to another even bigger place called Rocky Mountain House on the western side of Alberta, and we moved there last week Wednesday, and we've been on a road trip ever since. So we're not really sure where we put down our roots in terms of a church in Canada yet, but yeah, we come from South Africa. We're brand new to everything here, and the questions.
Oh, the time. Hey, what do you say?
What do we do with our recreational time? I'm a full-time athlete at the moment. I'm preparing for a race in August in London, and my wife is a family physician, so she's making sure people are healthy and saving lives. And we've had a huge, big adaptation to coming from the healthcare system in South Africa and the sporting environment in South Africa, where you don't have to train in snow the whole time. That's been a huge adjustment for me. That's from my side. Wifey, your turn?
Joe assured me she would answer yes and no questions, and not a lot more. Did you want to say anything, Joe? There you go. Well, Joe, I have a question for you. You are presently barefoot and pregnant. What it means to be human and to be a woman, to be a married woman, what does that kind of mean for you at present? She asked for the questions ahead of time, and now I'm just taking it off the top of my head. It's a leading question. You're working as a physician. You're caring for the needs of others. You've been called to give yourself to love, and did that idea of to be human means to be sharing the task of image bearer as cultural creators and caretakers, did that resonate for you? That's a yes, no question.
Yeah. I don't know what it has to do with not being pregnant, but I'm happily not pregnant.
I guess it has this to do with it, is that for some people and in some societies and even in some Christian circles, sometimes the view of women is that, well, should a woman be working outside of the home?
Okay.
Does a woman actually, is that a woman's place? Is that what it means to be human, or does it mean that women are really supposed to just be at home tending kids? So that's not what you've been called to, it seems.
Yes.
Yeah, I would not cope with that. I'm really, really grateful that I grew up in a society that didn't see that as the role of women. I went to all-girls school that definitely said go for your career. Men are a waste of time. Yeah, you're gonna power. So, yeah, I mean, just fortunately, that was never really seen as the goal. Kids and all that. So, I mean, I'm gonna have to, at some stage, get my mind around to that, but I think it's gonna be less natural than it might be in some cultures.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess I draw the attention to that, and I think this is actually really neat that you two were part of tonight for this reason, is that you are a doctor. You've been called to give yourself to caring for people, not necessarily having children right now at least. And this matters because what I was trying to show today from the book of Genesis too, is that even the Genesis narrative, which you might think, well, that's giving us just a really traditional view of male and female and a vision for life together. And what we actually see is that Adam is divided in half. What it means to be man, to be human, means that men and women together are called to the task of image bearing, of cultural creation, of working and caring for the needs of others. And that's why the early Christian church could view singleness and celibacy as a valid option for women as well as for men. A woman's value wasn't based around whether she could bear children or not. In some traditional societies, that is what a woman's role is. She is there to bear children, to give heirs to the family. And yet in the Bible, we see a very different vision. That women can serve, they don't have to get married, they don't have to have children in order to live a fulfilled, God-honoring, image-bearing life. And I'm trying to show that not only is it that and you're lucky that you grew up in a family, in a society, that's true, that honored those realities, but I'm trying to argue as well that theologically and biblically, that's true. And that matters if we're trying to follow Jesus and live lives that are biblically and theologically robust and honoring to God that way. Yeah, good. Anyways, that was me talking a lot, not you guys. But anyways, it was just a great example, I think, Joe, that you're able to serve God in that way. Second question. This is where it's kind of like, you guys just encourage me to just ask you straight. Okay, when it comes to sex and your relationship with each other, what choices did you guys make before you were married, and what motivated these choices?
So, in terms of not answering a yes, no, for us it was a very simple discussion and understanding. I met Jo when she was still in university, and we dated for about 3 years before we got married. And for me, the most important thing was to remain pure throughout my varsity life, throughout high school, and to commit to her when we had the opportunity. So I had this maybe idealistic, romanticized view of remaining pure until marriage, and then what this magical thing would happen the day of marriage, and how many times, and all those joys that Anthea and Carl are going to get to think about and practice. And for me, it was just really about creating a boundary of no sex before marriage, and that was something that we talked about from very early in the relationship. We chatted about what boundaries meant to us, but the most important thing was always just about having open communication, open discussions about what the boundaries were, and there was chatting about that as well. Having those conversations, and there's grey areas, there's uncertainties. You've got peers that are doing different things, you've got friends that are more elaborate in their, or dexterous in their ideology, and
That's well put. More dexterous in their ideology.
and for different people it means different things at different times of their relationship, and sometimes it's financial because you have to move in together. And not saying that just because a couple have moved in together that they have to be, but it's just, we had that boundary and we chatted about it quite often, and we tried to adhere to that, which we did until married. And then it was an eye-opening experience as to, okay, well, that, okay. Cool.
No, this is important, actually. I love that you brought this up, and Jill was like, I'm out now, boy, oh boy, they're talking about the honeymoon and all that kind of stuff. This is important, because we do live, especially if you're a Christian person, you're saving yourself for marriage. What you do have, and unfortunately and here's what my dad told me. I'll tell you what my dad told me when I was in grade 9, I think. He said, Dave, here's the problem with fantasies. Here's the problem with lust. You set yourself up for a certain vision of what it will be like. We just talked about expectations, and you go, and my dad was just really straightforward. He said, loving a real person is very different than your fantasies. This is actually a real relationship. This is a romance between two people. And it is not just simply sheer ecstasy without any need for communication, for caring about the needs of the other, for figuring this thing out. And so I think a lot of people, when they have saved themselves for marriage, and my wife and I did, and we kind of had to say, we just sort of empty the expectation box and dump it out over here on the side and say, okay, this is something we're going to have to figure out together. I had a camp director who told me, you know what, when we were engaged, he was like, here, I'm going to give you some advice. We're like, oh, please no. But he did anyways. And it was about sex. He said this, that learning to make love to your spouse is like learning to play violin. Hey?
Happy wife, happy life.
Okay. It's like learning to play violin in this sense, is that you don't just pick up a violin and play it as a master. Okay? You don't. Squeak, scratch, what am I doing? Ow, my fingers hurt. This isn't what I was expecting just to pick up. Someone in the balcony loves this example. Wow. Anyways, he told us this camp director, it was one of the most loving things he could tell us. He said, basically, don't have your expectations like sex will fulfill you. It won't. It's a part of your relationship that will help build it. That's good. It confirms your covenant that you've made to each other, that you're exclusive, there's no one else involved in this relationship. But to set your hopes as though, like, you know, if you're a Christian young person and you're keeping yourself for marriage, you know, you always, I don't know if you've ever had these thoughts, I did. I knew my friends did, they talked about it. They talked about, like, we want Jesus to return after our wedding day, right? And so it's like this idea that somehow the best thing that could possibly happen to our lives isn't the return of Jesus, it's something else. And so, thank you for sharing about the expectation part, because we can sometimes, the world and even our peers kind of elevate sex and what that means to this place of being like, this is how you know you've arrived in life. No, this isn't it at all. And that's the Christian view of sex is not that this is somehow I'm going to be fulfilled and everything about life is going to be magical now. It's not. Sex is hard work in the sense that it means it's building relationships, communicating. Enough about violence? I don't know. But you know what happens is that as you practice over years and years and years of practice, what happens in a marriage is that this area of your life actually gets better and better and better and better as you practice and as you care for each other. And rather than it being a tool of, I'm trying to get something for myself, if you view sex in that way, it will be broken, and it won't be what God intended, because it's a way of giving yourself for the sake of the other. And I think that's part of what you were saying. Yes. One other question, and I have no idea what you guys are going to answer to this. I may or may not agree. I may be like, no, forget that. Don't listen to these guys. I doubt that. I think they're pretty solid. But the last question would be simply, what wisdom can you see in God's design for sex and marriage as given in the passage that we've looked at? No, that's not the right question. That was a different question, Rosie. For someone else. Okay. If you could tell a group of young adults in Canada anything about sex and dating from your experience or your thinking on the topic, what would it be? Very open-ended. Anything, Joe, that you would say? Here's something to think for.
So, definitely that it's worth waiting for, not that it's this like, woo, that was worth the wait, but just in terms of, it's very difficult to wait for, but I mean, once you're in a marriage and you've got this commitment that's a lifelong commitment, you can then feel a lot safer to kind of struggle through getting to figure out what it is and get better at it. And then, yeah, just from the beginning of dating, to be very clear about what your boundaries are, to discuss them. As Anthea said, there's a long way between kissing and sex, so even if you know that you're not going to have sex, you still need to talk about what's okay, and to try and date someone that's kind of on the same page, because you're probably going to go to whatever the furthest boundary is of the two of you, because you're not each going to be strong all the time. And then, yeah, to just know that if you slip up and you make mistakes, or you go beyond what you intended to, there is always redemption, and you can always go back, and you might need some practical ways to kind of say, okay, well, we're not going to go anywhere near a bed, or we're going to have somebody who we're accountable to, and they're going to check up on us once a week, how we're doing, and I mean, there are a lot of practical things you can do that will make it a lot easier.
Yeah, that's good.
And then Dave, just from my side, thank you. In a couple of scenarios, it's really important not to rush into the relationship and to almost set yourself a couple of milestones within a relationship in terms of communication. Because so often people want to, okay, so I've kissed the person and then all of a sudden it's the next place and the next thing, and you're trying to tick all these boxes because some friend has done that and somebody else has done that. Whereas when we started, I took 3 months before I wanted to kiss her because it was really important to me that the person that I thought I was going to marry at that stage, I was reasonably sure, and I wanted it to be special. I wanted each iconic moment along the journey to be something that Jo would remember, that she could say when he asked me out, or when we kissed, or when we held hands, or something like that. So every step of the way there would be some kind of sentimental thing. So yes, I'm a bit of a hopeless romantic like that, but that was just something that was important to me. Thank you for the R. Can we all do it together? Aww. But and the second thing is that people often just rush into a relationship and you want to get to the stage where you're dating and then you want to get engaged because everyone's saying, so when are you getting engaged? When are you getting engaged? And then, okay, so you've got engaged, when are you getting married? And when are you getting married? And they're just always asking the next question and the next question. And it's kind of okay to swim against the grain and not to have to answer that and not to conform to society. And also in terms of having children, get to know each other, spend time traveling before you bring a child into the world, because truth be told, that's probably one of my greatest fears, is becoming a dad, and that's possibly why we refrain as frequently, just because I'm more terrified of that possibility for the time being, because I'd like to see a couple of things. Yes, but I mean, I like to communicate, and I'm saying, goalie, I'm going top left, and the goalie at least knows the direction to prevent any unforeseen. So we are good communicators in that sense, and we are very united on that front. So just encourage you to be willing to communicate and to find a peer group that you can surround yourself with. Read books together. I mean, we read the love languages, and yeah, it was crazy how my 1 and 2 were kind of almost Jo's 4 and 5 and vice versa, and how what I thought was a really cool gift wasn't anything that she appreciated, and she enjoyed buying me multiple items which I would receive, but I didn't know what to do with them, but it's just not my love language. So we didn't meet each other on the same par on a couple of things until we'd actually spent time reading and communicating. So those are probably the half things that I had in mind.
It's great. Those are all very good. Yeah, see? People are saying, yeah, that's helpful. Oh, I didn't tell you how to do this. I was just going to open up the floor before we close. Is there anyone else who had any questions for this? You walk around with a mic? They'll just shout it out, actually. They're trained well. You're going to have to answer them. Yes, it's not you walking around with the mic and then asking Joe to answer. Sorry. Did anyone have any questions for these guys? Anyone? Off the hook.
What was the last sport you competed in?
Athletics, track and field, 50-kilometer race walk.
How fast? How fast did you do that?
3 hours, 55 minutes for a 50K, which is 47 minutes per 10K. I don't know what that is in miles per hour, but it's around about 4 minutes 42 per kilometer. I don't know if that answers what you're
That's a
looking
fast
for.
walker.
Reasonably.
Awesome. Any other questions? Anything else? Got them in the hot seat here. Well, you know what? I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be with us tonight. I think that we've been encouraged by your relationship and some of the things that you said to us tonight. The other thing that I think is really encouraging is, and some of Anthea's students, I think they kind of, we talked a little bit about this as the students were leaving, but Anthea and Carl have decided that they're not sleeping together or living together before they're married, because it is actually what God has asked us to do. Paul will several times in the New Testament, flee from sexual immorality. Porneia is the word. We'll talk about that later, other weeks. But that's basically, it's not just intercourse. It's like anything that's not what God intends. It's the binding your lives together too closely in sexual ways, and he says flee from sexual immorality. And so, you know, Anthea and Carl basically said, and by their relationship, we're setting boundaries, we're making these choices, and you guys did the same thing. We're setting boundaries, we're making these choices. My wife and I did the same thing. We're setting these boundaries, we're making these choices. And it's really important to know that it's not just a foregone conclusion. Well, we're committed to each other, therefore we just have to give in to where our libido or drive sort of takes us. You don't actually. You can make real choices. We have something called self-control. And it's really possible to live in a way that God designed us to, and that by the Holy Spirit, God enables us to live as well. So, thank you for being an example with the decisions that you made. Difficult as they were, maybe challenging at times. For my wife and I, that was the case. For Anthony and Carl, that's the case. But with God's grace, it is actually possible to live the way He's called us to live. And I would encourage you that it really is, as Joe said, it's really worth it. And let me give you one last parting shot of why. There's this thing about being secure with another person. If you do end up getting married and you want to have a really great life in all areas, including in the bedroom, then it's worth waiting for the reason of you know you can trust the other person. I knew one young couple that you guys don't know, so don't worry about it, and I won't tell you their names. But lots of years ago, this couple was committed to, to celibacy, that we're going to sleep together for the first time on a wedding day, and then they didn't. And they slept together while they were engaged, and it caused this huge amount of confusion between them. Here's why. We were talking through it. We went, you know what? You know what just happened here? The one felt like if he could sleep with me when I'm not married to him, what's stopping him from sleeping with other gals he's not married to in the future, once we are married? And so her level of trust in him just hit the basement, even though they were engaged. They were wondering if their relationship was going to survive that, because of the trust was lost. For my wife, one of the reasons why she said, the first time I kissed her was the day we got engaged. I hadn't kissed her before. She said, no, that's my boundary. Okay, I'll honor that. Here's part of what was going on here. She said, I want to know that you actually want me, not just what you can get from me. So my decision to say, yes, I'll absolutely honor the boundaries that you set, because I want you, not just want something from you. I don't just want an experience. I don't just want to feel it. I want you. And so when you make the decision to draw really faithful boundaries, the ones that God has given us, you're actually saying to that person that you're in a relationship with, I love you enough to wait for you. I'm committed enough to you that I can exercise self-control. And I want you to trust me, that I can be faithful to you, even before we're married. That makes sense? Is that helpful? I found that really helpful to me, and just as a reminder of why waiting, because then you get inside of marriage and you have this incredible sense of depth, of trust in the other person. And guess what that does for your sex life too? It makes it far richer and deeper, because you know you can trust the other person. Because sex isn't just about genital activity, it is about sharing your life with another person. The most important organ in any sexual act is your mind. It's your psyche. It's what's going on inside your head. And that's why remaining pure, not only in the sense of waiting with your physical activity with another person, but even when it comes to pornography or different things like that, and what's going on in your head is the most important thing about what you're bringing. What's going on in your inner life, your spirit, is the most important thing that you're bringing to your relationship with that person. And so guarding that, making sure that that's something that's sacred for the two of you, is a beautiful, wonderful thing, a really helpful thing. If if you want to have a life of deep intimacy with your partner in the future. Good? 2 thumbs up for rock and roll. Made sense? Okay. Bless you guys. Thank you for being here tonight. We're going to keep taking this where we started today and even go deeper and deeper and richer as we go. That sound okay? Good. And thank you. Let's give these guys a hand as well for showing up.